Hey, hey, everybody. Welcome back to Pianist Academy. It's good to see you here. We've got a handful of people here already on the stream. So hello, drop your name in the chat. Let us know who is here, where you're from, where you're tuning in from. I hope the time change in the United States has not messed up too many people. I know this is the first stream since we changed times in the States here. So I hope that didn't mess up anybody. And if it did, well, we'll know for next time. So hello, Ser Woolsley is here. Hello, Ser Woolsley. Awesome. It's always good to see you. So there is a couple very neat things that I just have to talk about first. Today, I didn't even plan on doing a live stream today. Some of you saw this. Oh, Jess. Hey, Jess. Awesome. Good to see you. I didn't plan on doing a stream today because it was supposed to happen last week. And last week I was very sick. And some of you saw that in the community tab on the YouTube page. And yeah, it was a bad combination of food poisoning and like the 2-day flu. So it was pretty bad. But here we are. And crazily enough, today, the day that I didn't plan on doing a live stream, but today is exactly 1 year since Pianist Academy started. So that is just crazy. So it's extra special to get to do a live stream today. So, I mean, maybe it was a sign. Maybe I was sick on purpose. I don't know. So anyway, I'm glad that you're all here. It's so cool to be, it's like celebrating a 1-year anniversary today. And so it's great to be live with you here, whether you're live or watching the replay later on. So that is super awesome. Anybody else? Drop your name in the chat. We've got a handful of other people here that haven't said hi. So say hello if you can. Ser Woolsley has another submission for us today, and I'm super excited about that. Also, I'm doing a couple. I'm working with a couple new pieces of tech. Well, mainly just one thing, but I have this whole new setup where I can show you sheet music on my iPad live, and I can write on it, which I'm hoping will be awesome for the Masterclass sections and anytime we do stuff like that, like we're going to do today. So let me know if that's working okay and if the sound is okay, like the opening little countdown was played off my iPad. So if the sound was funky, can you let me know? I'd appreciate that. All right, why don't we jump right into what Ser Woolsley sent over. Ser Woolsley is working on another Chopin Prelude, this time number 20. Prelude in C minor, sometimes called the Funeral March Prelude, sometimes the Chord Prelude. So we're going to take a listen to Ser Woolsley playing this, and then we'll jump in and talk about the piece and talk about your playing, Ser Woolsley. I always thank you. I always appreciate hearing from you, and I love all the music. Are you going to go through all of the preludes? Because is this the third one? It's at least your second one, maybe your third one, right? So in any case, looking forward to hearing more from you, Ser Woolsley, and I always enjoy listening to what you send in. So let me cue this up real quick. And hopefully that'll be good enough. Okay, so here we go. Here is Ser Woolsley playing Prelude in C minor, Chopin, Opus 28, number 20. And then we're going to talk through it. All right. right, nice work, Ser Woolsley. If you're here, give Ser Woolsley a little round of applause in the chat. Awesome. So great work, nice job memorizing, Ser Woolsley. You always seem to have that taken care of, so that's very cool. You also, Ser Woolsley sent me an email with some questions, so I'm going to go through some of those to kick us off, and we'll go from there. So, all right. So first, your first question in your email, Ser Woolsley, was about, producing fortissimo, maybe dropping in with arm weight. You're talking about your teacher telling you to drop in with arm weight, but it feels risky, or you're a little confused about how to do it. And so what you're doing is kind of hovering and then playing. So let's talk about a handful of ways to approach that. All right, first of all, hovering in place, that's not a bad thing to get us started and to play the right notes. That's totally fine. So if we're in place and then we play, that's just fine. Okay. Something that you can practice once you've, hey, Jose, how are you? Ser Woolsley, once you've gotten in place and we're ready to play, the perfect thing to try to link some arm weight or playing with a little bit of weight into this is to try to play, it's almost like playing from the shoulder, but we're not going to lift the shoulder. You're going to mostly feel it, I think, in the elbow and in the wrist. And if we're in place and we drop the wrist and let the rest of the arm move as it needs to, that's going to be doing more playing with weight. So even if we're in place already, and then drop, it's very relaxed, right? So that can be a great thing for you to work on right now. Just drop in. You'll also notice, and Ser Woolsley, you may have heard about this on other places online, because I know you look at a lot of lessons online. But just about every motion at the piano is usually preceded by a motion. There's a preparatory motion that goes in. So even if we're playing with arm weight, you may have even just noticed me. Sometimes I lift a little and then drop, and then even if I'm in place, I lift a little and then drop. Right? So there's always some of that kind of motion, a little bit of preparatory motion, especially when we're playing chords and big things like that. And the louder we need to play, I'm not playing them very loud right now, but the louder we need to play, usually the bigger the preparation needs to be. So if I am going to play this fortissimo and try to just use arm weight, something like that. So you can see that there's even more lift and then fall in. Now, one thing you mentioned is that you feel like you're going to play the wrong notes. That totally may happen. In fact, I let go of one just now, and there were some other weird things that happened. But it's really good practice to get used to, one, taking that risk. Feel free, especially when you're practicing, take that risk. You know what the right notes are. We want to feel that there's enough looseness in the arm and in the body that we can drop in. It's a combination of looseness in the right places and tension in the good places, right? Because I probably have mentioned this before, but at the piano and there's a lot of talk about reducing tension or getting rid of tension, right? And if we take that to the extreme and we don't have any tension in our body, well, we can't even hold our arms up, right? This is tension, because I'm using muscles just to activate the arm, just have it lifted here. And even if I drop in where I'm feeling very free, there's still tension, good tension. Because if there wasn't, if I didn't have anything kind of holding my hands in place, they would just fall off the keys. Yes. Jose, that's a great question. Jose says, is there a sensation of pulling, or is it just a dropping down sensation? Jose, that might depend on the chord shape. I feel a little bit of pull in the fingertips. Let's see, what about this one? There's a little bit of pull in the fingertips, but I'm trying to activate just down. So I'm not consciously thinking about pulling back and toward me, right? But if there is a little bit of that sensation, because as the arm drops, it's going to create naturally a little bit of a semicircle as we drop in. So I'm only thinking about a vertical drop straight down. But if you do feel a little bit of pull on the key tops with your fingertips, that's probably a very natural consequence. And that's just fine. That probably tells us we're actually doing the right thing. Okay, so Ser Woolsley, that's one thing you can incorporate right now. As you prepare and place the hands and kind of get ready, right? We don't want to always hover, because hovering and not playing is tension. And if we just play from this hovered position, we're not going to get the best tone possible. We're not going to probably play as forte or fortissimo as possible. If we do, it's going to be really harsh sounding. And we're just keeping our hands locked in place because we're kind of afraid of what might happen next, or if we're going to miss a note. So understandable, especially making a recording. It's like playing for people, right? So understandable if you felt that way. Okay, next thing, a couple things I'd like to encourage you to do. Hey, Haydar is here. So just to catch you up, Jose and Haydar, we took a listen to Ser Woolsley playing Chopin, the C minor Prelude, number 20. And we're going through his performance, and I'm giving him some tips. So, all right. Here are a couple other things, Ser Woolsley, to think about. This is a fantastic piece to do some experimenting with tone production and with how we attack the keys, because there isn't an excessive amount of movement around the keyboard. We do have some jumps, right? And there are octaves, so there's some things to watch out for, but they're not really fast. It's not even like the settee, where we had big jumps of 2 octaves, or stuff that you've worked on in the past, where we have to move the hand around a lot. It's relatively small. Haydar says, play it again. We haven't heard it. Yeah, okay. We only had a couple people here before. Let me just play like the first, maybe like 4 bars or so that, especially Jose and Haydar, so that you guys can hear what we're talking about. Let me cue that up again. All right. And then we're going to hop back. Okay, so we got a little bit, so everybody could hear a little bit of the opening there from Ser Woolsley. So especially, I stopped there because we're going to talk more about fortissimo right now. Okay, first off, something that I wanted to mention that I'll just mention right away. Ser Woolsley, especially on the very first chord, I can see the tension in actually your neck. Like there is... like the tendons stick out in your neck when you attack that first chord. I'm not even sure how to recreate that in my body. But have you felt that, Ser Woolsley? Have you felt that happen? So one of the things, if we really do just release, don't worry about it being fortissimo, maybe just forte, a comfortable forte. If we release down and let weight take care of that, we can make sure the shoulders stay low and that there's no tension in the neck here, right? We really don't want that. The next thing I want to talk about is a number of different ways of attacking these notes that are forte. And so what you're doing right now is kind of a combination of hover, and then when you play, we're kind of going in, and there's a little bit of this lift up. Haydar, it's in C minor, not C sharp minor. So there's a little bit of this, you're kind of pushing in like this. That's actually one good technique, Ser Woolsley, but we could make it more free. Okay, so I would encourage you, if you want to keep doing that kind of technique, or as you practice, if we're going to explore this more, Really let the wrists pull the hand up and in, and with less of a jabbing, like quick motion like this, and more of a graceful and fluid. So even if I drop in, well, these don't really work together. If I drop, I'm not going to be pushing the wrists up and in, right? So these are two very different ways of articulating. The drop. Yes, Haydar, I will be happy to come back to you. Absolutely. So the drop, Ser Woolsley, is one way. The other way that you're doing more close representation of is kind of playing and lifting up. We can keep exploring this, but I would say a little more fluid motion, and feel free also, let the hands, before you worry about getting them in place for the next chord, let the hands come up, and then, obviously without changing the pedal there. So some of this attack is being triggered by the wrist. If we let's just take that first chord again. So the wrist here, you see there's still a preparatory motion. It's very quick. And then as I play, the wrist is coming up and toward the fall board. It's almost like we're standing on the fingertips a little bit more. But it doesn't happen right when we play. We're not already up here, because if we did that, we wouldn't be able to even play an octave. It would be really uncomfortable. So we play, and part of the release is the movement of the wrist from here up and in, right? So that can be a very natural. No, I'm sorry, Ser Woolsley, that was my bad. I changed the pedal way too early. That's all I meant. Okay, so sometimes we can practice this way. This is one type of attack and release, right? And you're already doing a little bit of that, so that's great. The other thing that I'd like to encourage you to do, and this goes along with the first way we talked about, dropping in with arm weight. If our hands are positioned and they're on the key tops, again, not worrying about loudness, it doesn't matter if it's not fortissimo, but can we feel a sensation of drop and only on the attack, a little bit of press with the fingers, but not at any point after the note is played. So what I'm kind of doing is showing you, these are ways of playing the piano that come from a couple different schools of thought, okay? Usually people attribute the not hovering, but having the hands on the key surface or very close, drop, and a little bit of press. Most of the time that's attributed to a sort of German style of playing. So if you hear people or watch a pianist who is very well known for interpreting Beethoven, let's say, they probably will be playing it close to the key surface, drop with a little bit of press. And this isn't Beethoven. But we can explore the production of tone and how it feels to play with that kind of technique, because it'll help inform us. And when we do go and we play some Beethoven, or we play some Brahms or Schubert, it'll be a part of our choice, right? And not only how we interpret, right? But how we interpret is sometimes linked to actually how we physically play the notes. So I encourage you to check that out, this sensation of drop and a little bit of press in the fingertips, but only at the point of attack. So as soon as I've played the chord, there's no more pressing. That's really, really important. We don't want to get confused with press, meaning stick and keep holding, because that's bad tension, right? Okay, now another way that I'd like to encourage you, and this is the most risky, and I tend to attribute this to the Russian style of playing. Many of my teachers were of the Russian school. And the ideas that I was taught, this is something I didn't actually learn about until I was at the end of my undergraduate program. If we really want big, forte, and striking, it tends to be a brighter tone, but we think about the hand expanding into our chord or our octave at the same time that we drop weight in, but the drop doesn't get cushioned by the wrist. So one of my teachers actually talked about this feeling of hand and expanding in, kind of like this, as like a snake being coiled. A snake that's coiled is not under tension. It's just in an optimal position to strike, right? And then when the snake uncoils, it's a massive release of energy. So this is probably going to break up on the recording that's going out to you. But if I play like that, just this first chord, not using the wrist as a cushion, using the fingers as an attack, the knuckles down as an attack, the wrist has a little attack, even from all the way up in the arm, but it's followed immediately by relaxation, we'd get a sound that's like this. It's very, very big. It's much more bright than the German type of tone. It fits extraordinarily well with a lot of Russian music, which is about producing bell-like tones. So especially if we're not playing forte, or if we only have like a big octave, something like that, you can tell that that kind of technique goes really well with this. So I would encourage you to also try that out. This is a drop in from above, but the hand, before it releases, Kedar says these are the hands of Kissin. If you listen to Kissin, Evgeny Kissin, his playing, I think his playing is very polarizing because he tends to play everything with that Russian attack. And so music that we want to be warmer and things, it's still striking and strident. And if you like that, it's amazing. And his playing is brilliant and spectacular, right? So that he's a great example of this style of technique. So really important to know, Ser Woolsley, if you try this, when the hand is above the key, it's in this place of relaxation. It's in like the neutral position, the same one we get when we shake out the hand and let it rest, and we lift it up. It's in that point, and it's above the key. And then when we come down and play, it expands into the octave. And as soon as that expansion is finished, it's just like that. And it releases back into this neutral shape. You can see just how the arm motion I'm making right now is exactly like a snake attacking, right? Same thing. Now listen to the difference in tone between that, tone and volume, between that and the more German style of drop and press. Yeah, hopefully that came across okay. In the room here, there's a big, big change in dynamic, and the German style is much more warm, even though I'm still trying to bring out the top note just as much. Okay, so those are a couple things for you to check out, Ser Woolsley. Yes, Ser Woolsley, in the Russian style, what I'm calling the Russian style, this is by the way, just my definition. This isn't based on any writings or anything like that from anybody. This is purely from seeing how my own Russian teachers have taught me. Yes, so the hand is always attacking from a bit above. You can do it with the hand on the key. It's much more difficult. It's really, you have to really know the technique extraordinarily well to be able to execute it from low. But it's much easier if we prep, if we can be on the key, we prep up and then release in. The prep up can even be a motion that helps to engage our brain from, here's our position, we're stretched on the key surface. The prep up allows the hand to relax, and then we strike, right? So that, man, I didn't learn that until I had been playing for 15 years. Something like that. So I had an 8-hour masterclass with a composer, a pianist and composer, who taught me that in one day, and I had never learned it from any other professors before that. Let's see. And then I did hear about it again and again after that point. But the first time, it was that 8-hour masterclass I had. I wanted to come back to a couple other things, Ser Woolsley. First off, great job When we get to the end of, toward the end of the fortissimo phrase, whoops, here we are. Good job researching that, knowing that that chord is C minor and not C major. It's ambiguous, or / the autograph, Chopin's own manuscript, shows an E natural on that chord, but it was one of his students that he corrected it, playing to being E flat. So good job playing the right note on that that particular chord there. Ser Woolsley says, you love the harsh tone the Russian way makes, the way it sounds on this prelude. Yeah. Okay, oh, good, and you have the Ekier version. That's awesome, Ser Woolsley. Very, very good. Okay, I had a couple other notes I wanted to talk about. Your pedaling. I don't have a camera down on the pedal, but you're kind of, especially at the beginning, the pedaling is very rhythmic. So you pedal, and then you lift and depress, and lift and depress, and lift and depress. I would love for you to change that to a simple, we lift when the chord changes, but the depression follows immediately after the lift, after the clearing of the notes, right? So this is, if I just say up, down for the pedal, it's up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Now, I'm only saying 2 words, up, down. The release is quick, and you know about this because in order to clear that, the release has to be quick. The downward motion is not as fast as the release was. So even though I'm saying up, down, they don't take equal amounts of time. The downward motion takes slightly longer because we don't want to thud the pedal, which, by the way, I could hear a little bit of on your recording. Hey, we have Jeffrey here. Awesome. Awesome. Hey, Jeffrey. So, yeah, Ser Woolsley says, okay, I was taking some time with the pedal, a bit difficult to stay on time. So, yeah, if you can work that in, where we can play the pedal, the release and the down, is we kind of think about it as part of the note where the pedal changes, or part of the harmony where the pedal changes. That's going to be great. And then slow the foot down a little bit on the way down. I know I'm just telling you these things. It's easier said than done. I realize that. Okay, so I wanted to mention that. We talked about tension. We talked about releasing in a couple different ways. Let's talk about the quiet section just for a little bit, and then we'll open this up for questions. So we have that crescendo really to the end of that line, and then we have it's a really hard line to make musical because we only do have chords, just one after another, and they're long because they're a quarter note long, right? But if we can have some kind of shape in mind so it's not just chord, 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 right? Can we, and also sing this top note. So here's one way you can start to work on achieving that singing voice more on the top. So you know the kind of motion that we talked about when we were just playing chords and the wrist coming kind of up and in, right? If we do a little bit of leaning with the hand and the wrist, so it's kind of a rotation, toward 5, and then also as we play, start to stand a little bit on 5. So you see how the knuckle here, you can't probably see that super well on camera. But this, if I show it to you this way instead of spread out over an octave, this is very strong, right? This position. The knuckle is sturdy, right? One of the ways we can achieve this is by a motion that lifts the hand up. I've got a bit of this double joint, like hyperextended 5 going on today. But if we can lift the wrist up a little bit as we play, we let the hand walk in, this turns in. If we feel that as one motion, yeah? Whoops. That's a very strong 5th finger. Playing it spread in the octave is more difficult, but if we feel a little bit of that rotation toward that, And notice how when I release, I'm releasing toward 5 because I'm feeling the balance point in my hand toward the 5th finger. So it's not going to release straight up. If it releases straight up, it's over the 2nd finger. And you notice how I lost the 5th finger articulation? But if the release and the focus is on the upper part of the hand, 5 comes out more. That might cover, I'm just playing through this to see if it triggers anything. But that might cover my thoughts for today, Ser Woolsley. Yeah. Ser Woolsley, did all that make sense? Okay, Ser Woolsley, you say you don't like the top voice standing up so much. We still need to hear it. So even if you don't want it that far extended over the chord voicing or on top of the chord voicing, we still need to make sure that we hear it. Even if it's even with everything, if we have more control over 5, we can choose instead of it just being buried. We don't want it buried because it's still the melody. So we still have to have it at least equal with the other notes, if not a little bit more pronounced, or, I mean, how I would choose to play it is definitely more sung. Yeah? Let's see, which Brahms intermezzo are you working on, Ser Woolsley? I should really do some classes on those. Those are beautiful pieces. We have a whole bunch of people here who have tuned in since we started. So if you haven't said hi, drop your name in the chat and say where you're from. Let me know what time it is where you are. It is 10:30 in the morning in Colorado. That's why I have my coffee, as always. And Ser Woolsley, you said, yes, 117, number 1. Great piece. So many of the intermezzos are wonderful, wonderful pieces. So, great. Hadar says, no, you should give lessons on Rachmaninoff. I will. Seth is here from Scotland. Awesome. Thanks for saying hey, Seth. So, Ser Woolsley, I'll give you a chance to have, if you've got a follow-up question or something like that, feel free to drop that in the chat. But in the meantime, let's just open the floor up to anybody else that has questions. I know Hadar said that he had an important question. So Hadar, feel free to jump in when you have a chance to type that out. And anybody else that's here, yeah, feel free to jump in. One other thing, while that question comes in, either from Hadar or from somebody else, there was one thing I wanted to talk about at the end of this Chopin Prelude. And that is, we usually have a Jay Warren from Mumbai. Awesome. Thanks for saying hi. At the end of this prelude, we usually have a crescendo out, right? And it goes... So if we begin that crescendo, I've got 2 different scores here. One doesn't have a crescendo written in at all. The other one has a crescendo written in that starts and measure 11. It starts here, and we crescendo from there all the way to the end. Jeffrey says, it's a little afternoon in Philadelphia. Hey, awesome. Awesome. So, Ser Woolsley, on this crescendo out, see if we can really link every chord to the next chord as far as building. It's almost like steps, because we don't have a great, like, fluid, free-flowing line of music. We have just this vertical, right? So it's hard to link this together in a nice crescendo. But each one, just a little bit more. So that when we do get to that last chord, it's not kind of coming out of nowhere, right? And the forte that we've approached and that we play that last chord with, it feels like it's in context with the rest of the line. So that's my last comment for you, Ser Woolsley. Awesome. Oh, and thanks, Ser Woolsley. Thanks for the super. I appreciate it. Cool, cool. All right, so we have a question in from Hadar. Question is, what keys go along together really good? I know the famous C, F, A minor. I need to know which chord keys, which chords go along with like D flat, for example, or C sharp minor. Okay, Hadar. Let me see. Let me try to figure out the best way to help you with this. Hadar, how much theory do you know? Like, yeah, how much theory? How much chord theory have you explored? Let's start with that question. And in the meantime, I'm going to try to pull up some blank staff paper here. And let's see. Clear. Okay. Hitter, see, and Tyler has a question. Awesome. Oh. Tyler, that is my favorite, probably my favorite Chopin nocturne. So I'm going to talk about that and as soon as I finish Hadar's question. But that's awesome. Oh, let's see. Well, we might be talking about two different ones, but I like both C sharp minor nocturnes. Let's see. You're talking about number 20, and I was I was thinking of a different one. I was thinking of this one, but I think you're thinking of the one that I'll pull up the music for it. But I love that one too, and we will definitely talk about that. I think they actually both go from a sense of 4 and into a sense of 3, so it's interesting. Okay, Hadar says, I know arpeggios and how to derive chords from scales. Beautiful. That's great, Hadar. So, for example, we need to know, I'm going to pull out a new little trick for us here. Oh, now we can see sheet music and my picture. Getting fancy. Okay, so Hadar, you know how to, you said, derive chords from scales. So that's fantastic. If we're in your typical C major, we'll just do a couple of these, right? Okay, so if I just draw all the notes of the scale, there's all the notes of the scale. The most important chords are, let's see, like the ones you mentioned. F, A minor. Okay, so F would be this guy. A minor. The next most important, or probably more important even than F and A, is G. Okay, these chords, I know we're not going to play in C major, Hadar, but it's great to introduce this concept. Okay, so Hadar, we need to know Roman numerals, or we at least need to know the chord, the scale degree that the chord is built on, okay? So in a major key, the first scale degree is called, the chord built on the first scale degree is called the 1 chord. The next scale degree is called, the fourth scale degree, the chord on the fourth scale degree is called the 4 chord. Then we have a 5. These are all capital because they're major. And then we have the 6th chord on A. Okay, now, if you apply this diatonically, meaning only using notes in the scale, to any other key, using especially the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6th chord, we're going to get the most important chords in each of the keys. Okay, so let's do that in, I think you said D flat. So there's going to be a whole lot of accidentals to write here, but so be it. Okay, I'm going to drop the accidentals in a second. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so there's our D flat scale, right? Scott's here. Awesome. Interpretation. He has a question about interpretation, styles, history, traditions. Great. Okay, let's come back to that, Scott, in a second. I've got to finish up answering Hadar's and then Tyler's question. Okay, so D flat. Here's our scale. Great. We need to go through. So once again, if we're going to use the same Roman numerals, we have the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord, and the 6 chord. Using only diatonic notes, only notes in the scale, let's build a triad on each one of these. So A flat is a note in the scale, so we need D flat, F, A flat. We go up to the 4 chord that starts on G flat, If we go a third up, we get B flat. Another third up, we get D flat. Okay, so now we have G flat major is the 4 chord in D flat major, right? The 5 chord, there it is, it's A flat major. The 6 chord needs to be, well, we can either say it needs to be minor, or again, if we just use diatonic pitches, we know that those are the 3 notes. Okay, so we have the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord, the 6 chord. So we can, so even if we play, whatever, that's only using those 4 chords, a little bit of improv on those 4 chords. So Hadar, if you follow that pattern of only using diatonic pitches, then we are going to be able to find those 4 most important chords in any key, right? Basically. Now, a lot of classical harmony obviously uses a lot more than those 4 chords, but this is a great, great starting point. Really important, Hadar, I know you like minor keys. The minor chord relationships, if you follow the diatonic pattern, you're going to get the right chords, right? But the Roman numerals that go with them, or the quality of the chord that goes with the scale degree, is different in a minor key. So let me just do those 4 again. So using the enharmonic. So this is C sharp minor. And then if we use the natural minor. Natural minor does not have a raised 7th scale degree. Okay, so if we build those same chords using only diatonic pitches, we get a minor 1 chord going up to the 4 chord. We get a minor 4 chord. If we only use diatonic pitches, we actually get a minor 5 chord. That usually isn't exactly how theory works, but for right now, we're just going to leave it like that. And our 6 chord, I think I've got that right, becomes major. Yeah, so then we have our 1 chord. Oh, I need to give that. Here we go. Now, right away, off the bat, Hadar, it looks like, if we compare these up and down, it looks like the quality of the chord, major versus minor, like it's just flipped. That isn't always true. Is it Christian or Christian? And hey, Amsterdam, awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, Hadar, the quality for all the other chords, it doesn't necessarily flip from major to minor. On these particular chords, it does. Okay, the only other thing that we need to be aware of that I'll show you right away, and then we'll move on to another question here, is that in the harmonic minor scale, this note, the 7th scale degree, this note, that guy, the 7th scale degree, is raised. And it's raised so that we can have what's called a leading tone. So if we raise that to B sharp, we get the leading tone in C sharp minor. Leading tone. Okay, the leading tone is a half step. It's always a half step below the tonic, or below the 1st scale degree. Always a half step below. It is not the leading tone without that sharp sign. It's just the 7th scale degree in a natural minor scale. So in order to create the harmonic minor scale, we raise the 7th scale degree. I'm going pretty fast here, sorry Hadar. But if we raise that 7th scale degree, and now we go back through the chords, we'll notice that B also now needs a sharp in the 5 chord. And when we sharp B, the 5 chord becomes major. So that is why in C sharp minor, we will have G sharp major. Okay, there's a lot more theory than that behind harmony and function and all kinds of things. But basically, Hadar, apply these examples, use diatonic notes, right? Spell out your chords in a key, And you can even, screenshot this or something, and you'll have at least the correct chord qualities in major, like we did here at the top, and then in minor, like we did here at the bottom. And those are going to be your 4, let's say, most used chords in major keys or minor keys. Okay? All right, Hadar, that was a good question. It was like a crash theory course through like a month or 2 of theory. But you've got this. Awesome. Okay. Cool. Let's go back to C. That's why I did C sharp minor. I know you love it. All right. Let's go back to some other questions. Christian, I'm going to come back to your question in a second. Let's talk. Tyler had that question about Chopin's Nocturne 20 in C sharp minor. Let me pull that up. Oh, not that one. Okay. So, Tyler. It's this nocturne. Right? And then the main melody. Brilliant. Okay. So, Tyler, your question about that piece was when you listen to performances, everyone seems to change tempos dramatically in the 3/4 section. So, let's see. Here we are. So, first off, there is a tempo change marked in the score. The beginning is marked lento. If we, my score even has a metronome marking of approximately 69. So that's probably, without checking myself, that's probably about here. The 3/4 is marked animato. Quarter note equals 160. Let's see. Can I sight read it? Yeah. Sorry about the bad fingering. Okay, so yes, that is definitely because of the tempo marking. The tempo marking tells us it should be changed. Even if there wasn't a quarter note marking, let's cue in on the word animato. So mine shows 160. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So it's quicker, but most importantly, it's more sprightly, right? We have more energy, more animated. Right? A couple bars later, we go back into 4, and we go back and the tempo is marked adagio. And then we have the repeat of the main melody. Yeah. A little early there, but okay. Cool. So Christian, I'm sorry if I'm getting your name wrong, but I hope that's helpful. So what does the 3/4 section mean? That we could have a long discussion about that. There could be inspired some by some research into when Chopin was writing this and what we can find out about that. The piano addicts community. We should nickname it that. Thanks, Hadar. So there could be, if we're talking about interpretation, and this kind of also ties into what Scott brought up And Scott, if you're still here, feel free to chime in if you have a particular question about interpretation and things like that, if a piece in particular. So this is great. Christian just said, it's like his mind goes to some innocent childhood vibe and then returns to hard reality. I think that's awesome. Something that I have a lot of my students when we start working on, not just start, but when we're working on an interpretation of a piece, I ask them to bring in a sheet of paper or at least a note on an iPad that has a bunch of descriptions, adjectives, emotions, phrases, not long. We're not writing paragraphs. We're writing words or, one word each or 3 words in a little phrase that describe the feeling. What does it make us feel? When you listen to somebody perform it, what does it make you feel? When you listen to various people perform it, do we get different ideas about how we're feeling about the piece? What kind of emotions do some performers bring out that others don't as much? And so a lot of music, we don't have great resources into figuring out exactly what was in the composer's mind. It's really eye-opening. Anytime that a pianist has an opportunity to work with a living composer, it's always extraordinarily eye-opening how little emotionally is represented on the page. Even though we get phrase marks, we get dynamics, we have rubato markings in Chopin, tempo, articulation. There's so much, we think there's so much there, but underneath all of that, when you can find out the image that a composer has, it just can change everything. So that's, that's one thing I saw real quick, like Julio brought this up. I brought Claire de Lune, and I just put a masterclass out about that. And in the full version of the masterclass, we go into huge detail about imagery and things like that. I think the 20 minutes that are free on YouTube are a lot of technique and things, but start with that piece of paper or a note on your tablet or something and write down as many emotions as you can. If I was your teacher, I wouldn't probably accept like 10. I would want 20, 30, more if possible. The more that we can dive in and the more we can hone what that feeling is. And then I wouldn't want to know this or need to know this, but can you tie that emotion to something you've experienced? That can be very difficult, depending on what we have lived through and what we haven't lived through. Sometimes we have to maybe, if it's, if we're talking about, for me, like being an American, I have never personally lived through war in my country, in my neighborhood. A lot of composers wrote about that. I have to rely on the feelings I get from things like movies because I don't have that firsthand experience. But if you do, anytime you have that firsthand experience, that is a fantastic place to draw emotion from. And that will really help translate the piece, because music isn't what's on the page, right? The composer put it down. It's a placeholder. It's what helps us to get started, let's say, right? But art, when music becomes art, it's what happens when we play, and not just when we play and someone hears it and they feel something, right? It's even if that's us, just personally, if we feel something, that's great. If it's our family because they hear us play, that's great. If it happens to be for more people, that's great too. But that's where the art in music is, right? So I'm glad to hear that you say you're trying to do this. It makes it easier to interpret. Yes, have that meaning, underlying meaning behind. So I loved what you said about kind of reliving some kind of childhood vibe or something that's more playful. It's playful, but like even go deeper than that. That isn't just like pure joy. There's something not quite stable and not quite right about that chord and the harmony that that bar makes. And then it resolves. Tyler says it's almost confusion. It's almost confusion. Yeah. Okay, great. So Awesome. So I think I kind of answered two questions there. So Tyler, I know this was initially your question. I hope that was helpful for you. We went a lot deeper. Julio previously had said, well, two things. You're scared about tackling Clair de Lune. That's just fine. Wait for it. Play Reverie first. Play Debussy's Reverie first. If you want a similar kind of feel in a piece that doesn't have quite the technical challenges, work on Reverie first. And Julio had also, maybe you deleted it, Julio. I think you did, but I remember what you said. Julio had brought up doing an explanation of hand and Faber gestures in music, and I'm actually going to get into that. I'm going to start to get into that in a few pieces over the coming weeks, and hopefully that'll turn into just a standalone video that maybe has 4 or 5 examples on how to apply hand and Faber to repertoire itself in a couple different ways, maybe from a couple different periods. So yes, I am getting there. Oh, that was Jose, not Julio. I see it now. Jose asked for that. Yes. Let's see. Scott says, I'm curious about Chopin's indication of leggerio in Opus 42 Waltz. Leggerio is always an indication of lightness. It's not usually an indication of a tempo change or anything like that. I know, Scott, you had mentioned about interpretation and things. I don't think I have the complete waltzes on my iPad. Let's see. No, I've got 2. But I have a book close by, so I could look that up for you real quick, Scott. Give me just a second. So, all right, let's see here. I have to find your comment again to remember. Okay, Opus 42. Okay, so Scott, you're probably talking about right bar like 4 or 8, right? Yeah. Okay, here's a little sight reading. Let's see, just some right hand. So Leggerio, Scott, is talking about the melody, and it's everything that's happening in the right hand. We don't want to be bearing down on this like it's... Right. And we can hear that in any recording that we'd listen to, of course, too. So... with the pedal... Yeah. So let's see. Oh, Jose, thank you for the super. Thank you so much. Yeah. Scott. So did that answer your question in particular? The tempo marking in Opus 42 is vivace, so it's very fast. But Leggerio is always light. Yeah, and I think, Ser Woolsley? Ser Woolsley has Leggerio. She says Leggerio is lightly, depending on the feeling you get from the word. Yes. Okay. So that's where I would look. And if we dive deeper, because Scott, I know you had a question about interpretation and things like that. If we take that word can be the starting place to cue an entire interpretation around. So if this is a feeling of lightness, and we have to, and that has to come across in our playing. Okay. Then we need to decide what kind of images. I love using images to tie to pieces of music and to kind of tell our musical story through. So, okay, this is a waltz, sure. There's debate about how waltz-like Chopin's waltzes are, especially compared with Viennese waltzes, right? Should we be able to dance to it? It's a good question. We should probably do a little research about that and see, does this fit? Is it a danceable tempo and a danceable feeling? And if it is, that affects our interpretation and probably our image that we have in mind. If it doesn't, and it's purely a 3/4 waltz that's very fast and fleeting, and what emotion can we tie to it? Do we have feelings of anticipation? Do we have feelings of flightiness? Do we have feelings of fluttering, like heart fluttering? Is it flirtatious, right? So going back to what we talked about earlier, these are the kinds of words that I'd be looking for, like listed on a sheet of paper. They're also the kinds of things that I would think about when I'm going to start interpreting a piece. Usually the day that I start learning it, what is the feeling? And how do I need to articulate in order to bring that feeling across? Now, a lot of times when we practice, we can't always, the way we have to program the body doesn't always fit with that, right? But then we come back to it. We always come back and revisit that interpretation or those ideas, and then apply what we've learned in the learning in the muscle process, the learning of the muscle movements, to execute that interpretation. So Scott also says the indication sostenuto on the next pages. Let's see here. I don't have an indication of sostenuto. Oh, there it is. Okay, a couple pages in. So Scott asks, how much of a speed drop? So Scott, again, what I would do is I would listen to, first off, I would listen to a bunch of recordings of the piece and see how everybody takes the speed change. Sostenuto itself is not an indication of tempo, once again, just like leggerio. So perhaps sostenuto literally means sustained, right? Not to be confused with the sostenuto pedal on a grand piano. He's not telling us to use the sostenuto pedal. He's just saying the sound, the overall tonal sound that was produced at the beginning was light and airy, leggerio. And now it's going to be more sustained. That's the difference. So maybe we could argue there could be a small tempo change, small, subtle, because the tempo marking isn't actually changed. That would be the first direction I would lean without doing the research into maybe researching what Chopin wrote about or his students wrote about it, and before I would research recordings of the piece. So I'm thinking like 5%. 5% of whatever tempo you're going to play from the beginning, that's probably our limit because we have to stay in context. It's more that the feeling, the underlying feeling needs to change from being light and airy and fleeting and fluttering to being more stable. Right? I hope that makes sense. I love questions like that, Scott. I wish I've not played that waltz. I haven't played many of the Chopin waltzes. I mainly focused on some of the other works, a lot of polonaises, the nocturnes, and Second Sonata. Speaking of the Second Sonata, Ser Woolsley, we were talking about the Prelude. Ser Woolsley, I would check out. This is going to be a bit of a leap in technique for you, but the third movement of Chopin's Second Sonata is also a funeral march. It's got a similar feeling to the Prelude we worked on earlier today. Check that out. You might enjoy playing it. It's a lot longer than 16 bars or whatever the Prelude is, 16 or 24. But it would present some interesting and fun challenges for you, I think, and it's the same kind of vibe. So third movement, Chopin's Second Sonata. Let me make sure I haven't missed anybody's comments before I go on here. This is great. I'm so glad we've got a good number of people here today, and some people I haven't seen before here on the channel. So welcome. Let's see. So Hadar mentioned the Prelude in E minor. Hadar, you also said Moonlight Sonata. Many people feel it as a dreamy piece, and you feel sorrow every time you play it. That's another interesting thing to do the research about when it comes to interpreting. Moonlight, the title Moonlight, was not given to the piece by Beethoven. I'm pretty sure it was given after Beethoven's death by a music critic. If it wasn't after his death, I'm sorry about that, but it for sure was not by Beethoven, and I think it was by a music critic who said it's the Moonlight Sonata and it paints this picture of moonlight. Well, that was not Beethoven's image. Just, we should all be clear about that. Let's see. So Scott says when you get to the super romantic sostenuto section, you don't really want to slow it down. Good. Good. I would agree with that. We want to keep it, relative to the same tempo because the tempo marking hasn't changed, and it's still a waltz. It's not like the Nocturne, number 20, that we talked about, where the time changes, the tempo marking changes, and the whole feel changes. Chopin also does a ton of that in the Nocturnes. And Nocturnes, like the B section, if we call it that, in the Nocturne, in many of the Nocturnes are dramatically different, usually in a different time signature and in a completely different feel with different motifs. So when it doesn't go there, there's no reason to, we don't want to manufacture something, right, that doesn't have to be there. That won't feel genuine. So I'm seeing things about here, Chopin's Prelude number 4. We've talked about that on some live streams before. So Ser Woolsley says you're thinking about working on it. Julio says it looks easy, but the repeated notes in the left hand are challenging to control. That is very true. Always left you fatigued. Yes. Okay. So real quick about the, I don't know, if Tiago is here, you should say hi, Tiago. Sometimes Tiago tunes in. He sent in for a masterclass portion, the E minor, a performance of the E minor Prelude. So yes, I actually usually don't have students work on that piece until they are pretty comfortable. Because despite the notes being easy to learn, the interpretation is very difficult. And the execution, like has been mentioned here by Julio and by Ser Woolsley, the execution at an extremely soft dynamic of the same notes over and over again without having any of them stick out. That's very, very challenging. It requires a really actually well-developed technique to keep it under control without feeling tense, which I think is what was kind of talked about in the chat here. Julio said it always left you feeling fatigued. Yeah, it requires it's like walking on a tightrope between too much tension but having just so much structure in our hand and body that we don't lose the tiniest amount of energy that we intend to put into the key. We don't lose any of it. that it just goes straight down and straight in. That takes a lot of practice and a lot of attention to technique work to develop that kind of thing. And then when we have it, then we can really interpret it really, really, really extraordinarily well. Ser Woolsley says, the Burgmüller Etude performance was nice. Thanks for watching, Ser Woolsley. Let me just digress for that for a second because we've got a couple of the shorter questions here. I'm going to come back to Tyler. Yeah. So there's going to be a masterclass on the Burgmüller, or Burgmüller, I guess is the better pronunciation, Burgmüller. I'm going to be doing, maybe over the course of maybe the coming year, I will do all 24 etudes that are in Burgmüller's Opus 100. And we're going to start with 2. We started, well, I put the performance out of, there it is. I did not play it from memory. So anyway, there'll be a masterclass on that one. That's number 4. And there will also be, after that, somewhere down the line, that's number 2. La Arabesque or Arabesque, depending on the score. That, going back into Jose's question about Hanon Faber, that is probably going to be one of the first times I dive into that, because that motion just ties in perfectly. Let's see. So going back to Tyler's question here. Oh, and Haydar, real quick. The Rachmaninoff, Rock 3, a lovely piece. I like Rock 2 more than Rock 3 personally. I like the theme. It's to me, it feels more romantic and less, there are just less notes getting in the way of the theme. So I love so many of the themes in Rock 2. I never had a chance to play it with orchestra, but I did learn the piece many, many years ago. And Rock 3 is, that's my second favorite Rachmaninoff concerto. And it's possibly my second favorite concerto of all time, behind Rock 2. So Tyler's question here, technique tips for playing quickly and quietly. Oh, Ser Woolsley, who are you going to see? Who is playing Rock 3 in May? I'd love to know. So Tyler says, I struggle to play quick scales in pieces without playing them at least mezzo piano. Tyler, okay, if we are struggling to play softly, that is probably due to too much tension in the body and not enough freedom in the hand and in the arm. So real quick, Tyler, playing forte, let's say playing mezzo forte is, we're going to call that the easiest dynamic to play. Mezzo forte is just kind of comfortable. Forte is the next most difficult. Piano is going to be probably the next difficult. And then playing fortissimo, but very fast. I usually think of that as probably the most difficult thing. We have to combine a lot of different aspects of technique in order to execute that. So, Tyler, are you talking about, in particular, and because you asked about Nocturne number 20, are you talking about the scales, in particular at the end of the piece? Let's see. This is another thing. I haven't played it in forever, so let me refresh. And then the really long one. To D5. Okay. Okay. So Tyler, okay, awesome. I see you said yes. Okay, Tyler. I actually did a video on the channel here demonstrating this exact passage and how to practice it. I think it's called Faster Fingers. I think the video is called Faster Fingers, and it's listed under my intermediate level playlist. So go check that out. I'm going to give you a brief version of what I talk about in that video here. So these passages are basically scales. They don't start on a note we're familiar with, let's say, but it's basically a C sharp minor scale that starts on other pitches in the scale itself. So the fingering is shifted, but it should feel somewhat similar. Now, if we take that principle and we go back to just simply feeling scales, let's play B major. What I'd really love for you to do, Tyler, is practice in small groups of notes. Typically, we see a major scale is divided, if you look at books on how scales are divided, they call them 2 tetrachords. And we get 4 pitches, and then the next 4 pitches. Whoops. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 to make up our 8 notes. I like to think of scales as divided according to the way the hand feels to play it. So this is a little different for every scale. For example, in B major, it's 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3 again, and so on and so on. So if we take those groups, let's say 1, 2, 3, and then crossing to 1, those first 4 pitches of a major scale. What I'd like you to practice is going across the thumb tuck, playing it quietly, and don't go further than that. If you feel that notes don't come out or they're not speaking, slow down a little bit. Feel them all articulated, and then go back to feeling this. We're trying to feel these 4 pitches as one gesture or one motion. It's just one. Through the thumb tuck, because the thumb tuck is what's probably going to be the thing that gets smacked, or it's going to be the thing that gets smacked followed by notes that don't sound, right? So then we follow that up with the next part of our scale, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So we can link these 2 together, but with a little pause in between. I'm going a little quickly, but if we play and then re-articulate E here, and then play, re-articulate. And every one of these, let me show you a top-down view. Okay, so every one of these, my hand is, after the thumb tuck, my hand is already ready, even though I'm not going to continue on playing. And then, now, if you can't go this fast, that's just fine. Go at a tempo that you can feel, but we want to still feel it as one gesture, right? I would do that for at least a week, maybe longer. Then start to put it together, one entire octave. If I just end on 5 for now. Or making the thumb cross across the octave. Okay. This also plays actually right into what Jose brought up earlier today about Han and Faber. Tyler, if you're familiar with the Han and Faber books, or I think it's just one, use it. And if you're not familiar with it, go and look on Amazon for Han and Faber, the new virtuoso pianist, because another aspect of the technique that's happening here is we're feeling one motion in the wrist for each one of these groups. All the way up and down, right? And then even if it's a longer group of an octave, I'm practicing of falling in, and then there's lateral motion, and then it releases up. Right? We can also take that same principle and we can apply it to the passages in this piece. So if we take the really long one, it's a little clunky. So I would do the same thing. Practice. Right at the top, we have a turnaround. So, bum. right? So I'm making all of these little groupings. So Tyler says, through the whole octave, the gesture is falling in. The gesture, it's close to being equal. If I go back to just the scale, it's close to being equal time falling and then equal time rising out of it. And the rising is dictated by, it's really dictated by the arm. Personally, I like to feel it being led by the wrist, but it's not, the wrist isn't coming up without the rest of the arm being engaged. So that's how I like to feel it. There are other people, if you feel the lift coming from the shoulder, not like this, right? But that the shoulder is cueing the arm to come out and the elbow to come out and the wrist to come up, that also works too. So it's down and then up and out. The smaller the gesture is, the faster that shape happens. So if it's only 4 pitches, Ser Woolsley says, yes, but remember to pause. Yeah, I'm not pausing enough during each repetition. So Tyler, that would be one of my suggestions at soft playing. That's going to get you through this type of passage in the Chopin Nocturne more quickly. It's going to lead to a product. It's going to lead to a product more quickly. Other things that we can practice working on that are similar, but they're going to be very slow practice. Coming back in the coming back down gesture, Jose. Let me come back to that a second. Here's a great tidbit for everybody here. I usually don't talk about this outside of lessons. The way that we practice slowly, I did talk about this in one video, but the way that we practice slowly needs to be influenced by the execution that we have to make to play it at tempo. So, practicing slowly for the sake of playing slowly and getting all the notes right is good to a point, but it will never lead us beyond, and it will never lead us, most of the time, to performance tempo, especially if it's a technically challenging thing. We need to see how we need to execute it at the final tempo. And that can be very difficult if you're self-taught. That's really part of what a teacher is there for. They're not there to tell you played a wrong note here and you played a wrong rhythm here. They're there to tell you how to practice better so you can achieve things. So, for example, in a fast scale or in a fast passage like this, all the way down to G, the actual articulation is not legato. As the fingers play, it's not staccato, but it's definitely not fully connected. It is not finger legato like this. And if we practice slowly, it doesn't matter how much time we spend, it's not going to lead to that. Because the fast speed in slow motion sounds and looks more like almost detached. Yeah? I hope that makes sense. So that is how we can apply this. If we were to experiment and go further and feel how it feels to play faster. Yes? Yeah, so Tyler, like you said, if you force the legato articulation, we're going to get stuck. We're going to have really sticky fingers. And we're not going to be able to shift and move around nearly fast enough. But if we realize when we execute this, first of all, pedals down for all of this. Right? And then if we pull back, if we pull the camera out and focus on the bigger picture, each one of these is a light articulation, not staccato, not thinking about being detached, but it's also not legato. So it's not like which is detached. and it's not staccato, which is that. It's between detached and legato. And when we speed that up, even without the pedal down, it sounds pretty smooth. With the pedal down, it's perfectly smooth. It also gives you that kind of pinging bell-like tone if we're not sunk so deep in. Let's see. So Jose, coming back down gesture, Jose says. So at the top, there's, I think it's gesture 3 in the Hand and Faber book. At the top of this, anytime we have to reverse direction, we usually make some kind of wrist circle. So we begin the ascent with a lower wrist circle. When we come out of the ascent and we change directions, the wrist comes up and above. I would be leaning more to the right while I actually play this. So my arm position is, well, if I move the mic over, I can do it a bit better. So I'd be leaning more like over here. Arm position is down. This is just on the last like 5 notes of this particular passage. And then as we shift direction, the wrist goes from being low, making a low wrist circle, to making an upper wrist circle coming back down. Right? Now, I find that scales coming down, I like to do far less of circular motions with the wrist. And I like to focus on one other thing in particular, and that is keeping the hand, or the top of the hand, kind of pointed in the direction that the scale needs to move. So for example, after we make this wrist circle and we come back down, as soon as I trigger the first hand crossing, this is causing the top of my hand to actually be pointed up and away. It's pointed toward my left. And I try to maintain that position of the hand slightly, pointed to the left as I descend. And I also like, and you'll see a lot of pianists do this, but on downward scales, we tend to play from a little bit higher position. I don't know if today that's just being triggered by the number of black keys in this passage, but no, even in C major, it's a little bit of a higher position. I feel like I have more control. So if the wrist is just sitting a little higher, that makes that really, really easy. I mean, relatively speaking. It's a lot easier than if, think about it this way. The wrist is kind of pulling the hand in the correct direction. And let me show you both of these things from the top down. So this circle that we made at the top of the keyboard, downward circle, you see it comes to the right, and then it comes up and back around to the left. And then at this point, I stay relatively raised. And even though the hand is doing this for the finger crosses, I'm feeling like the wrist is really leading me back down. So relative to, let's say, if I maintained very perpendicular alignment, I'd be all the way out here, right? It would be more like this. And that actually causes more alignment problems than letting the wrist turn a little bit. You see how, maybe you can see this, my pinky is actually kind of off the keys. Okay, as opposed to going up, it's lower, coming down is up higher. In a very similar way as how we kind of play glissandos. The hand is turned here, but playing back down, wrist leads, right? Okay, cool. That was great. That was kind of a deep dive into that particular passage. And also that stuff, the hand position stuff I did not talk about in the video on this particular passage. Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for the question. That was great. And thanks, Jose, for, again, the super earlier and the question that kind of leading the discussion along in this particular direction. I appreciate it, Jose. Ser Woolsley, oh, let's see. So people were talking about who you're going to see in concert. Yuja in Toronto? Oh, jealous. That would be fantastic. And let's see, Ser Woolsley said, oh, I don't know. Korobienikov, or Korobienikov. I don't know that pianist either. I hope they are lovely to listen to, and I hope they give a inspiring and a dramatic performance. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. And thanks for, if you weren't here right at the beginning of the video, thanks for helping celebrate 1 year of Pianist Academy. It's today. Today is the 1 year anniversary of the channel. So this was a great stream. Thanks, everybody, for participating. Thanks, Ser Woolsley, for the submission of your video playing Chopin's Prelude in C minor. It's always great. I always love hearing from you. For Tyler and Jose and Julio and Scott, if Scott is still here, there's a link in the description below. There's some directions on how to submit a video if you'd like some feedback on a piece you're working on or on a performance. So anybody, especially if Scott had questions about interpretation and things like that, I'd love to talk about that. And I'd really love to hear how things are being played. That would really help me guide the interpretation in the right direction. So anyway, always feel free to click the link below and submit a recording for that. If you haven't already, please click the like button. You probably have, but if you haven't already, click it. It helps out the algorithm and whatnot. You know the drill. Anyway, we're going to be back on our regular schedule starting in 2 weeks. So we don't have a live stream next Wednesday, but we do 2 weeks from today. I hope the time change didn't mess anybody up, but watch out for that because here in the States we changed by an hour. Jess, hey Jess, awesome. Okay, awesome, Jess. We talked about so much stuff. Hadar says play something. I'll give you a little something. So we'll call this classical. I know I know Ser Woolsley is always asking me for classical music at the end. On my other channel, I have an arrangement of Nessun Dorma coming out this Friday. So other than the people who support me on Patreon, no one else has heard this. I don't think I'm going to play the whole thing, but I'll play like half of it for you. How's that? And then we'll call it a day. So this is a Puccini, arranged by yours truly. Okay, here we go. We're going to stop there. Anyway, you can hear the whole thing. It builds into some fireworks at the end of the piece. So you can hear the whole thing. It'll come out on my other channel on Friday morning. I'll probably put a link here too because I think I think it counts as classical music. That one, for sure. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you in hopefully 2 weeks. And yeah, I always look forward to seeing you in the comments or on the channel the rest of the time. So thanks again for tuning in. Submit your videos if you have them. And practice smarter, not harder. I'll see you next time. All right, everybody. Take care.